Ladies and gentlemen, 182 passengers on board the Jaffar Express have been taken hostage as Baloch Liberation Army has claimed responsibility for the attack. They've threatened execution of hostages if counter-operations are launched. 21 Pakistani military personnel have been killed. The Baloch Liberation Army, or BLA, intensively fired at the Jaffar Express train as it travelled from Quetta to Peshawar. A statement from the separatist group said it had bombed the track before storming the train in Rabot, Sibi district. Balochistan is Pakistan's largest province. Well, it is the largest province in terms of size, but in terms of population, it is the smallest. And it is the richest in terms of natural resources, but it is the least developed. It has been seeing a series of attacks, from the coordinated attacks in August 2024 across locations to Quetta railway station bombing, among others. That was again last year and even in 2023. But with this attack, are the civilians now directly bearing the brunt of what many nations, including India and the United States, have called out Pakistan for harboring terror? Well, in this case, Baloch Liberation Army, that's BLA, the militant group, has been designated by United States and Pakistan as a terrorist organization, but has been engaged in decades-long insurgency against Pakistan government, seeking independence for the natural resource-rich province. BLA has been accusing Pakistan central government of exploiting the least populated region's oil and mineral wealth, while the ethnic Baloch minority of the province faces discrimination and battle poverty. Now remember this is also at the heart of it, an ethnic battle, because Baloch people, they really believe in preserving their way of living, and that's very critical to what's unfolding in Pakistan currently. Well, according to provincial census report Balochistan 2017, only 43 of 100 people could read and write in Balochistan, lagging over 15 percentage points below Pakistan's national average. Less than a third of Baloch women can read and write. This is according to the 2017 census data. But amid all this, remember, Pakistan ranks as world's second most terrorism-affected nation, according to the Global Terrorism Index. That's GTI 2025. Pakistan now ranks, as I said, among the second most affected country by terrorism, moving up from 4th place in the previous year. Is Pakistan now bearing the brunt of its homegrown Frankenstein? Well, militants were once state-controlled. Pakistan is witnessing a sharp increase in terrorism-related deaths, with Tehreek-e-Taliban, for that matter, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, as some of you may be aware of, is emerging one of the deadliest groups globally, according to Global Terrorism Index 2025. TTP, Taliban now fuel regional instability. Haqqani network undermines Pakistan. Lashkar-e-Taiba spreads global jihad. Policies that have backfired as proxies escape control. Well, there's a lot that really needs to be uncovered. Let's just try and understand what's unfolding. I'm being joined by Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation, Prabhu Dayal, who's a former ambassador. Faraz Saeed should be joining us shortly. He's a Pakistan journalist. We hope to have him real soon. I'm also being joined by Maruf Raza, who's a strategic affairs expert. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining me. Well, let me just straight come to you, Major General Dhruv Katoch. What's happened in Balochistan is extremely unfortunate. You have I was just hoping that we could have started with Faraz Saeed, the journalist from Pakistan, who could have possibly given us any update, if at all. But there are at least 182 hostages right now. There's a threat of them being executed by BLA. This is an extremely sensitive situation. But how should Pakistan be looking at this? Many people are saying that Pakistan is literally getting a taste of what it has been harboring all this while.
Thank you. Yes, Pakistan is getting a taste of what it has been harboring. But in this particular case, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me? Yeah, you're right. You see, Pakistan is getting a taste of its own medicine. But there's a difference now, you see. In this particular case, I don't really support hijackings of aircraft and trains, But I think what has happened here is, as far as the Baloch Liberation Army is concerned, they have been very sensitive to the requirements of the local population, and they have left all the civilians, most of the civilians, especially the women and the children. And the hostages now are only, as per reports, the military personnel, the police personnel, and other security personnel. So I think it is par for the course. There are two fighting organizations there are two organizations fighting against each other, and it is a fair fight. That is one. Number two, I think it has been planned in a very, very critical area. It is difficult for the Pakistani security forces to reach there. So here the advantage is with the freedom fighters of the Baloch freedom fighters. Let us see what happens over the night.
Right.
But reports kept coming in that the Pakistanis are using Air Force and helicopters, etc. But that is not going to make a difference in this battle. It won't affect it. You require ground troops. And for the ground troops to get into action in this area, I think the advantage lies with the freedom fighters. Now, the last point I want to give out here is, I think this is going to be the most serious security situation which Pakistan finds itself in, because it has set a precedent now. Balochistan is a very, very big area. And if they have to guard every railway station, every railway track, every road, they don't have the security forces for it. They are already completely stretched in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So I think it's going to be a very, very difficult situation for them. And unless they can come to a political agreement with the Baloch people, I'm afraid there is no way in which the Pakistan military and their security forces can win this particular round.
Sir, allow me to interrupt you. There's some news that we're getting at this point. There's an update that's coming in at this point. There are at least 30
leader of Balochistan, and Musharraf did it without any qualms. In fact, even Musharraf approved the rape of Baluchi women by saying that they had enticed the Pakistanis to conduct this rough act, which is absolutely unbecoming. So there's a long history. Balochistan was forced to become part of Pakistan, and ever since they became forcibly part of Pakistan, there was no fair treatment meted out to them in any of the trials. In fact, you might remember there was a case of Commodore Jadhav, who was suddenly arrested out of nowhere on the borders of Iran and Balochistan and brought into Pakistan and shown that he was spying for India in Balochistan. And that case went on for long and dragged on. So Pakistan's entire assertion on Balochistan is built up on false claims and false lies. And I think this is an opportunity for India to move in with a bigger canvas of contestations to argue against the Pakistanis that how would you justify your holding hostages of individuals who were plucked out of Iran-Balochistan border and saddled into the scene as insurgents. And finally, and most importantly, Pakistan's laws are very differently interpreted for the Baluchis as against for the rest of Pakistanis. So Pakistan's in for a rough time, and it doesn't matter whether it's 10 or 20 who were kidnapped. Fact of the matter is, they represent nationalities, and those nationalities...
I get it, Maruf Raza. I'm being told that we are being joined by Faraz Saeed at this point. Faraz Saeed is with us? All right, Mr. Faraz Saeed. What's the update that we have at this point, Mr. Faraz Saeed? What's the situation there right now in Pakistan? We're being told that at least from at least the latest BLA statement, there's at least 30 Pakistani personnel, military personnel who have been killed. There are claims that at least there are 214 people who have been taken hostage. What can you tell us?
Thank you, Sneha. First of all, a highly condemnable event that has been, in fact, going on in Balochistan's area. The district in which this hostile event has happened is Kutch area, which in fact itself is a very hostile area, even for the military movement, for the movement of the armed forces in that area. So it has been very difficult for the forces to reach that particular area. Secondly, and I mean, there are disputed reports of how many people have been abducted and how many personnel have been, martyred so far. So far, reports suggest, now these are disputed reports, that about 180 people who were on board the train have been abducted, and there has been some sort of a hostile situation ongoing right now. Military operation is being carried out. The armed forces, the Air Force, the ground forces have cordoned off the area. They are making sure that they somehow are able to release those hostages, which include not just serving military personnel, serving intelligence officers, so much so that even the civilians, the kids, the children are also on board who have been abducted. There has not been any kind of demands so far from this offshoot of BLA, but the situation is worsening. There's an absolute blackout on the information that has been released, and the only information that has been quoted so far is from the BLA releases so far. On the contrary, the military spokesperson hasn't been very open about the latest situation. They're only telling us that they are dealing with the crisis. And as per our evaluation and as per our analysis, this situation is not as good as the military or the reports have been suggested, because again, it's almost 10 p.m. at night, and this situation occurred in the broad daylight. So if the operation so far is being carried out and the hostage situation is still persisting, and there has not been any kind of breakthrough, the situation can get worse. Yeah.
Okay, Faraz Saeed, what I need to understand at this point is, particularly when you talk about BLA, how do you look at this hostage crisis? How do you look at the attack that's happened, particularly from Pakistan's perspective? Many would say that BLA has been a separatist movement, has been a separatist militant movement. Pakistan calls it a terrorist organization, for that matter. But civilians at the level of which it is right now, being targeted, being taken into hostage, in the big picture within Pakistan, how do you look at this?
Okay, so a bit of update. As far the latest security reports are concerned, about 80 out of those 400 people who were on board the train, the security forces have been able to secure their release from the terrorists who are playing the hostage scenario, as well as the BLA's latest developments are concerned. So what we've seen in the near past.
Let me just clarify. No, let me just allow me 1 minute, Faraz Saeed. Let me just clarify this. You are saying 80 people have been able to be secured out of the 400. There were only 182, or between 182 to 215 who were hostage. So are these 80 you're talking about the larger 400 passengers who were part of the train and eventually would have possibly at some point disembarked before the others were taken into hostage, or are these 80 people part of the hostages? I just need this clarified.
Those 80 are part of the hostages who were abducted by the BLA terrorists. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the operations are ongoing, and these are the latest reports that indicate this development. As far as the BLA is concerned, what we've seen in the near past is that there has been an upsurge in their activities in Balochistan, in parts of KPK. They have been aligning with other forces as well. For instance, ISKP and its offshoots are, so far cohabitating with them and launching correlated operations. And the latest move is hit and run kind of situations where they attack sparsely located areas they would attack, they would create a hostile kind of a situation, and they would run away. So in order to make a statement that they are there and they are making an impact, and there is a security situation.
Okay.
But the latest issue, the latest incident, what we've seen is that they've actually created a hostile situation. They've taken away those 180 hostages, and then the military operation was carried out, and from them 80 people were released. So the kind of latest activities that BLA has been playing is sort of nefarious, because what military sources are claiming at that even right now during the operation, the terror operations, they were in contacts with their links in Afghanistan. So even during the operation, they were in contacts with their links in Afghanistan. So it vindicates Pakistan's position that Afghan soil is consistently being used to attack Pakistan, and terror activities are being used against Pakistan. So I mean, this could play in a way that Pakistan in the near future might have to carry out strikes within Afghan soil, and this might attract even the US interest in Afghanistan, because again, if this spillover will not be contained within the Pakistani territory.
That's a very strong statement coming from you, Faraz Saeed. That's a very strong statement. You're saying Pakistan is going to conduct air attacks on Afghanistan for what you're saying. But let me just get in Prabhu Dayal at this point. Prabhu Dayal, just look at what Faraz Saeed is saying. I mean, look at the picture from within Pakistan. What's going to be what's been India's stand in this? How is India going to be looking at this? Because Faraz Saeed is saying that this is an attack which is backed by Afghanistan in Pakistan soil, Afghan-backed terror attacks in Pakistan soil. How is India going to be looking at this?
There are several issues which you have raised, so I will try to answer them one by one. First of all, the seriousness of the situation is very evident from the comments which Mr. Faraz Saeed has made. But as an earlier panelist, Mr. Maruf Raza had pointed out, there is a very deep sense of discrimination and exploitation by the Pakistan government which prevails among the Baloch minority in Pakistan. I served as consul in Karachi, and we covered Balochistan. I traveled to Balochistan quite a few times. There was a large Baloch community residing in Karachi, and I interacted with them. And the impression which I got all along was that there was a very deep sense of discrimination which was held by the Baloch people. Balochistan is a sparsely populated province, as you mentioned. And although it occupies 44% of the land area, its population is just 7%. But it is very rich in mineral resources. Coal, sulfur, chromite, iron ore, barite, marble, limestone, all these are abundant in Balochistan. But unfortunately, the Baloch people feel, and they have oil and natural gas also, they feel that their natural resources have not been utilized for their good. And in fact, their natural resources are being exploited by Pakistan. And now China has joined Pakistan in this exploitation. So a lot of the militant Baloch anger is directed both against the Pakistani security forces and against the Chinese who are working in Balochistan. Now, let me come to the Afghan issue which you pointed out. Afghanistan never accepted the Durand Line. For that matter, the Pashtuns living in Pakistan also feel that the Durand Line separated them from their Pashtun brothers in Afghanistan, and therefore it is only a colonial legacy. They do not want to continue with the present situation. They are favoring a plebiscite. They said there should be a plebiscite, and let us decide where we want to be, whether we want to be a part of Afghanistan or whether we want to continue being a part of Pakistan. So there is a sense of anger in the Afghan community, the Pashtun community residing in Pakistan. And naturally, they have affinities with the Afghans across the border. Now, Pakistan played a pivotal role in the ousting of the earlier regime and sending the Taliban to power in Afghanistan. And Pakistan was hoping that the Taliban government would dance to its tune. But this has not happened because, as I said earlier, the Afghans do not accept the Durand line. Now, there is a close network between the Baloch Liberation Army and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. In fact, this train today, which was hijacked, the Jaffar Express, was traveling from the capital of Balochistan, Quetta, to the travel of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, Peshawar. And naturally, this close connection between the TTP and the BLA becomes evident in this manner also. Now, unless the Pakistanis send overtures which are meaningful, unfortunately, the situation which exists cannot be resolved because the Baloch will continue nursing their sense of grievance. Now, you ask me, what is India's attitude? You know, Pakistan has been pointing fingers at India. Pakistan has been alleging that India has been somehow abetting separatism in Balochistan, which is complete nonsense. These are baseless allegations. The fact is that instead of pointing fingers at India, the Pakistani authorities must try to sincerely resolve the grievances of the Baloch people, as also of the Pashtun people. That they are not doing. The regime in Islamabad, which is Punjabi dominated, is exploitative. It has been exploitative right from the beginning, and this is promoting the deep sense of exploitation and discrimination within the minorities, that is the Baloch people, and also the Pashtun. Let me also add one thing. When I served in Karachi, there was a Sindhi separatist movement also. It was called GSIN, and its leader was Mr. G.M. Syed. And the basis of that, the whole background of that was the Sindhis also felt discriminated. Since then, of course, Benazir Bhutto became Prime Minister, things eased out a bit. But the sense of discrimination in the minorities in Pakistan is very, very acute. And the incident which happened today is an outpouring of that feeling of discrimination.
Faraz Saeed, do you want to respond to what Prabhu Dayal has said? He's also, he's represented India in Pakistan as well. But my question to you is, look at what Prabhu Dayal is saying. He's saying the Pakistan central establishment has not done enough to reach out to ethnic disparities that have emerged within Pakistan, whether it be Baloch, whether it be Pakhtuns for that matter, which now have also taken terror overtures.
Is this question for me?
Faraz Saeed, for you.
Okay. I mean, I've heard Mr. Prabhu, the gentleman, he has a very keen understanding over Pakistan's situation. But as much as we historically have been blaming Punjabi establishment, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Okay. As much as we love to blame Punjabi establishment for the discrimination that have been there for over past 70 years in Balochistan, I would like to remind you that when General Zia took over, and he was a Punjabi general, he was a Punjabi establishment. He was the one who once and for all decided to relinquish all the cases against the separatists, all the cases against the Baderas of Balochistan to start afresh. So there could be a national reconciliation, a national consensus. Although we hate Zia, although we hate how military establishment has been ruling over Pakistan for decades, but that was the movement which Punjabi establishment triggered back in 70s when General Zia tried to do that. But terrorists, separatists anywhere should not be galvanized for whatever their grievances are, be it in India, be it anywhere in the world, terrorists are terrorists. Terrorists will be held accountable for their actions, whatever they are. As far as the marginalization of Baloch are concerned, as far as the discrimination that has been going on, that is acknowledged well. And a lot of segments of mainstream Pakistani society acknowledges it, raise their concerns, raise their issues. I mean, Maharang Baloch is one of the Baloch leader who have lately somehow emerged from the errands of Balochistan, and she has become a national icon for her rights movements. But BLA kind of terrorist organization cannot be tolerated, no matter what their grievances are, no matter what their rationale is to propagate terrorism in Pakistan. And as far as the gentleman,
no, the question is not to tolerate that. The question is, has enough been done from the establishment to ensure that they're not fed into? They are not fed into. Prabhu Dayal, you wanted to make a very quick response to Faraz Saeed. So a minute to you before I go to the other two panelists.
Well, I'm delighted to hear the Pakistani journalist saying that all forms of terrorism are bad, because all along Pakistan has maintained the position that there are good terrorists and there are bad terrorists. The terrorists whom they send to operate in Jammu and Kashmir, they call good terrorists because they are fighting for the liberation of Jammu and Kashmir. And the TTP terrorists who were attacking Pakistan itself, they were labeled as bad terrorists. So at last, some sense has dawned on the Pakistanis that all terrorism is bad. This is what India has been saying, while Pakistan itself was saying some terrorists are good and some terrorists are bad. There is no discrimination, and I'm glad that they have begun to realize it.
Okay. If I can just go to Major General Dhruv Khatoj. Major General Dhruv Khatoj, anything that happens in a neighborhood always has very long-lasting impact and far-reaching consequences. With what's happening in Pakistan, what's happened today in Pakistan, what's happening over the last few months in Pakistan for that matter, the repeated instances of terror attacks, how must this be seen geopolitically? What's the imminent challenge at this point?
Well, Sneha, very frankly, I think the challenge is really to the Pakistanis. I don't see what is happening in Pakistan spilling over to the rest of the world. This is confined to Pakistan. It is their internal problem, and it is something which they have to handle. Now, even when the Afghan Taliban took power, that was the time when the Pakistanis, they thought it was a great victory for Pakistan. But in many channels, including yours, I said at that time that the Pakistanis will rue this day because the security cover which the United States was providing has been removed now. And we have seen what the situation is now in Afghanistan, and that same Taliban has gone against the Pakistanis. I think Pakistan is in a very serious situation. It doesn't impact India. It's a very strange thing to say, but whatever happens in Pakistan now stays in Pakistan because we have distanced ourselves from that country completely. We have no relations, no trade relations, no people-to-people exchanges. We have nothing. There is a very strong border. They are on that side, we are on this side. So very frankly, it doesn't impact us at all, the level of violence which is taking place in Pakistan. It is for them to decide. But having said that, for Pakistan, I think this is going to be a security problem which they cannot really get the better of. The only solution which I see for the Pakistan establishment now is to come onto the table and talk to the Baloch people. Get onto some sort of a political settlement. Militarily, I'm afraid they have lost this battle. They cannot win it anymore. So the Balochis have got the upper hand. And from now onwards, they will continue to have the upper hand, because what has happened in the past few months is all the Baloch organizations have got together and are fighting together. This is a new development. Earlier, they were doing their own thing in their own areas. Now it is coordinated action. And with this success achieved, you will find all the Balochi people are rallying behind their Baloch organizations, their Baloch military. And the Pakistanis are not in a position militarily to handle it, regardless of the fact that they've got an air force and the tanks, which are absolutely no good in the terrain of this type. So if I have to give a suggestion to them, get onto the table, talk to them, and for God's sake, the economic disparities which the Pakistani establishment has put on the Baloch people for the last 70 years, do something to rectify that. If they don't do it, they're in trouble, and it is only going to increase from here. Stay.
Maruf Raza, do you agree with what Major General Dhruv Katoch has said in terms of what's happening in Pakistan geopolitically? The impact of it stays entirely in Pakistan, and it's not just about the impact for India. It's also a lot that's happening in geopolitically. Does it only stay in Pakistan? Do you agree with him on that?
It's really, what I'll say will surprise some of our panelists. It is something that has to stay within India's realm of influence. India should not exploit this situation to give them more pain and more trouble than what they are capable of handling, especially so that they have messed with India over the past several decades. As far as this particular situation is concerned, eventually the Pakistan army will probably take control of things because they are a ruthless body. How they have dealt with the rebels in POK area, which we call POK, Pakistan calls the Northern Territories. And, Musharraf was an architect of that very ruthless system that he proposed to kick people into place, but its problem still stays. That's the point General Katoch is making. You can do what you want, but unless you negotiate with them, you are not going to get a full-fledged solution just by the boot and the bayonet. And finally, what needs to be understood that in this tough terrain of Balochistan, where many a big army has suffered drawbacks, like on the borders with Pakistan and Afghanistan, this new incident has come as a surprise to a lot of Pakistan's well-wishers. But the reality is, you play with fire, you burn your hands. And that's what is happening with Pakistan. And I don't think that Pakistan has any solutions in their notebooks to solve the problem. They are going to be trying to pick out information here and there. And for them to claim that Afghanistan had a role to play in this is nonsense. Afghanistan may have sent a few Taliban, TTP, and various other people into Pakistan to create a mess there. But Afghanistan is something that Pakistan has to deal with separately. It's not a problem that they can deal with by putting the gun on India's shoulder.
Okay. Faraz Saeed, I think I'll give you 30 seconds. You could have your closing remarks. It's going to be a long night in Pakistan.
It is. And 80 hostages have been released so far, including men, women, and children. But I want to make one thing absolutely clear. These terrorists in Afghanistan, the jihadists, were created by the Western allies, the American allies, back when Soviets invaded Afghanistan. They left, the mess was left for Pakistan to deal with. Then in 2021, they fled from Afghanistan, and then again, the mess was left for Pakistan to deal with. So if we're dealing with the mess and if we are the victims of terror today, let's not blame and lecture Pakistan from across the oceans, from across the borders, because Pakistan is in the situation. So if Pakistan is dealing in on its own way, let's not blame Pakistan for all of the making of the world that happened in Afghanistan. So I think we need to understand how history is uncovering and how reality is playing today.
I think I'll have to go to Prabhu Dayal. Faraz Saeed is saying that Pakistan has had a lot left to clean after every time. But I think that's the argument that comes from the other side of the world, from Pakistan's neighbors, from India and several other countries, that there's a lot of terror that has been harbored from within Pakistan.
Well, let me say this again. What we are witnessing in the provinces of Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is the direct consequence of ruthless suppression by the Pakistani armed forces. Let me state that the Baloch records mention that thousands of Balochis have disappeared after they were abducted by the Pakistan security forces. The Voice for Baloch Missing Persons, which is a non-profit organization representing family members of those who disappeared in Balochistan, says that approximately 7,000 cases have been registered with them since 2004. So there is a deep sense of anguish within the Baloch community. They feel that they are being ruthlessly suppressed. They are being denied their human rights. And that is why the separatist movement has taken ground. But frankly speaking, the separatist movement has spiraled out of Pakistan's control. And I don't see the Pakistani authorities being able to put it down anytime in the near future. What should be India's policy? Well, as Mr. Maruf Raza said, this is Pakistan's problem. We should not be getting involved. But of course, we will call for the rights of the Baloch people to be respected.
All right. I think as our endeavor has always been, we've brought in all sides, and hopefully viewers have been able to hear all sides. So to our panelists, thank you very much for joining us. Major General Dhruv Katoch, Prabhu Dayal, Faraz Saeed, as well as Maruf Raza. Thank you very much for your time. We'll be following this very closely. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, news and updates.